Hello friends, in this video we are going to see what are components, what are the different parts of components, how we are going to define those parts, and what are the purpose of those parts in the component. So Angular application is set of components. We create each component and arrange them to form our application. These components work together to provide a great experience. Each component contains a template, a class, and a metadata. Template lays out a UI fragment defining a view for the application. It is created with HTML. We can include directives and binding in the HTML. So template basically becomes the UI HTML of the component. Class. So class contains the code supporting the view. It is created using TypeScript and the class contains properties and functions. So these properties hold data and that will be shown on the UI, and functions helps the UI to compute any logic. Metadata. So metadata provides additional information about the component to Angular. This metadata defines the class as component. The metadata is defined using a decorator. Now what is decorator? So decorator is a function which adds metadata to the class, its members or its method arguments. The scope of decorator is limited to feature it decorates. It is prefixed with an @ sign, and Angular provides built-in decorators, for example @component function. Now this is the example of a simple component class, or you can say a component. At the bottom we have class definition, which has single property name of type string. At the middle we have defined our metadata using component function, and at the top we have imported component function from Angular core. Now let's see through the application what are different parts of components. Now I have created this component inside a file app.component.ts. Now by convention, whatever the feature name, you have to use that name. Now this component belongs to app or root, so we are going to name it as app dot whatever the component, whatever the class you are creating. If it is a module, you have to name it module. If it is a component, you have to name it component. So you are using app.component.ts. So by looking at it, we are clear that it's a component and it belongs to app, so it's an app component. Now inside this ts file we have created a class using a class keyword and then the class name. By convention you have to use a feature name. So feature name in our case is app, as it belongs to app, and then you have to prefix component keyword, so that signifies that this is a component. So our class name is app component, and we have used export keyword with this class. Now this export keyword makes this class available in the other modules to import. So by convention or by rule, this class or this component becomes a ES module. Now by looking at this class definition, you must feel familiar that the syntax is similar to C# or Java. Now this, just above the class we have defined our metadata using a component function. Now class becomes a component when we give it a component metadata. So this metadata information is used by Angular to understand how to instantiate this component, how to construct the view out of this component, and how to interact with this component. Now in TypeScript we attach this metadata to this class using a decorator. So this decorator is basically @component. So this @component function acts as a decorator and it decorates this metadata with the class. Now this function, as you can see, it is a function. We have used parenthesis, and to this function we are passing an object which is indicated by curly braces, and this object has many properties, so we are using just 2 of them. Now when we want this template to be referenced in some other page or some other HTML, then we want to give selector to this template. So this selector is basically my app. So wherever this my app will be referred in the HTML, this template will be used. So this my app is basically a directive name given to this template. Now template, we specify the HTML we want to render when the selector is used in the HTML. So this template becomes the UI of, or the HTML of this component. Now you can see in this HTML we have used binding. So this two curly braces denotes binding, and we are binding this name property in this HTML. So when the UI will render, we'll see welcome demo user on the UI. Now this component is decorated just above the feature. So we have to define our decorator or component function just above the feature which it is going to decorate. So that is why we have class and decorator above and below. Finally, we have the import section. So we are importing component function so that we can use this component function in our component class. So this is all about the component we have, and let's see how this component is bootstrapped. So in the app.module.ts, this component is imported with the class name, that is app component, from this JS file, because default extension is JS. And then you can see we have bootstrapped. So there is a property, we have specified app component to be bootstrapped, and in the declarations we have to declare the component we are going to use in this module. If there are multiple, so we have to specify multiple with comma separated. And we have also imported external module, that is browser module. So every application, Angular application, requires browser module because it is going to run on the browser. So this is how a component is being created and bootstrapped into app module. So I hope you like this tutorial, and in the coming videos we will be creating a sample application where we will show you the complete flow from index.html to the component, and we will render a simple basic HTML page.